Hi, everybody. Welcome to Big Deck Energy. We are back after a 2-year hiatus. I'm Allie.
I am Scala.
And we are officially back. We are here to tell you that we've been up to a lot over the past 2 years. Personally, obviously, we've been busy with work. Life gets in the way, as it goes. But we have still been gaming. We've still been hanging out. We've been up to lots of different things the last time that we were doing this. We were just playing Dungeons and Dragons. We were just getting into gaming. And since then, we have been doing a lot. We've been on Discord, running play-by-post games, playing Dungeons and Dragons, obviously, Vampire the Masquerade, pretty much everything under the sun. We've tried Fate and lots of other games. And obviously, we keep playing our board games, and Game of Thrones still strong in our hearts, the card game. So, Scala, what have you been up to?
I'm finally DMing my first game after 2 years, thanks to Allie and teaching me everything she knows. That one is for a RPG system called Burning Wheel, which you could, I guess we go over social media now, you could catch on our YouTube channel, the Big Deck Energy, but you could also search it by The Burning Table. We're on Twitter at Big Deck Energy _ and Instagram under Big Deck Energy Podcast.
And from there, if you join or if you look us up on YouTube, you'll be able to join our Discord. And we'll have links to that. They'll stay active. So if you want to get in touch with us at all, that's how you'll do it. We'll put links everywhere we can for that. Discord's a little finicky. We can't link it on Instagram and Twitter as easily. So you'll have to go through YouTube for that one. So I guess we just jump right into today's topic now that we're back. And there's really no reason for us to be on hiatus anymore. So
there we go. Yeah, with the pandy, we have we have plenty of time to be doing this.
The pandy.
It just sounds less intimidating when you say
also can't say the word. You can't.
Yeah.
You get blocked everywhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can't say the word.
All right. So, yeah.
You could say the Roni.
The Roni or the pandy is what we'll refer to. Don't imagine it'll come up too much, though.
I like the word Roni. I'm not going to lie.
I'm a little closer to pandy. I don't know.
We can debate about that later. So I guess let's talk with Scala brought up that he is DMing officially now. So
yes.
We are playing a game called The Burning Wheel. It is a very uncommon, not popular game. Sorry, Burning Wheel, if you're watching this, all 1,000 people that play it. It is a great RPG system, though. And Scala, you want to talk about why it's so good real quick before we jump into the topic?
Yeah. To me, the reason I love Burning Wheel is it's really open-ended and it's role-play heavy. For me, a lot of the fun that comes into like strategy and role-playing games comes from the critical thinking aspect of it. And in order to have that for the players, their decisions need to matter. It can't be kind of like a linear thing where it's just, okay, well, I need them to get to this point, so I need to force them in this direction. It's more about building their characters. And the other thing with Burning Wheel is how your character starts isn't necessarily and usually never where it ends up. So you have things like beliefs, which will change throughout the story. And the other great part is it's not just me creating a world, it's us creating a world together. And it's really just telling a story.
Well, Scala, if there was ever a segue, I would say that that's one.
Yes, for our topic today.
Yeah, the game is super collaborative, and over the process of learning how to play the game, we decided that we would all work together, which is part of the story, but I would argue we're doing it more than probably most people do, where we're really involving all of the players, the DM is including all the players.
Yes.
In creating this world. So we thought we would talk about world building, and not particularly just Burning Wheel. We're just going to be using that as our example, considering that's our most recent endeavor. But it's super important, we think, to talk about, because if you ever DM, you create a world, whether you're running a campaign that is already written or you're writing your own and you're sandboxing it. Understanding and creating your world are kind of the basis of starting a game.
Yeah, and it's also going to determine how long your players stay in the game. So if you don't have, and I think we touched on this in our first episode, if I remember, if you don't have an interesting world and kind of story to tell, they're not going to pour too much into their characters. They're not going to be able to follow the story as well. I have a terrible memory.
You do.
Yeah, Allie knows this
Correct.
about. I literally forgot my own birthday one year. Don't ask me how.
Also correct.
Yeah. So for somebody like me, I need an intriguing story. So one of my first experiences with anything like that, like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that, was with Allie. And the main thing I remember from that was there was so much back information, and there was maps, there was illustrations, there was music for like every scene. It was so detailed, and for me, that definitely helped me kind of remember everything and get a little more comfortable with it. Because I mean, that's the weirdest part about RPGs when you first start off, especially with like Dungeons and Dragons, is kind of coming outside of yourself and pretending to be somebody else.
For sure. And I think that having an in-depth world that's fleshed out allows people to explore that world. And like you said, their characters become invested in it because they need to explore the world, because you're giving them something to look for. Now, does that mean that the entire world is fleshed out from top to bottom?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. There's been times, I think it happens at least once an episode, where something comes up I didn't think about, and I have to think on the fly and kind of be like, all right, well, story's going in a different direction now. What comes up? So one of the ways I counteract, and I think this is an important part of world building, is try to have as many, think about all the different options that are out there, and kind of, you don't need to have it completely ironed out and fleshed out, but you need to have an idea of like, all right, well, how would this NPC react to this situation, or what would happen in this world? And that's why the world creation, the world building is so important, because if you don't have that structure of kind of the politics, the religion, all that stuff, the ruling families, if there are ruling families, the time period, the technology that's accessible. One of the things that I guess an on-the-fly thing that happened with Burning Wheel was, you want to talk about Isle de Proct?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of technology.
So I have a character that is, so in this Burning Wheel game, I play a character. Her name is Thea Coppervon. She's the best. She's got, she's a little much, but she is from a area that is not where the game takes place. This area is supposed to be really hard to get to. So there's these questions of how could this character possibly be here? Why is she here? And all of these sort of led to, what does she know and what doesn't she know? Obviously, the beliefs and the culture are very different. And I one time jokingly made a joke about indoor plumbing, because the other two characters were picking on me. And I was like, well, you don't even have indoor plumbing. And then I went and I ran with it, because we didn't completely have the island fleshed out. We knew that we wanted it to be a little bit higher technology. We just didn't know to what extent, because we weren't at the island yet, so there was no reason. And my character is super guarded, so you would never know if she was telling the truth or not. So it didn't matter so much. But that one moment sparked an entire world building but a conversation between us. So we decided to make it like a steampunk area. Don't tell our other players, they don't know all this information yet. We decided to make it a super steampunk area, and we actually did give it a lot of technology that you typically don't see in those mid fantasy level games. So yeah, and how does that happen? Well, you have an idea. So once I knew that I wanted it to be steampunk, and I knew that there was technology, I knew that whatever I threw in there, I could kind of make work if I was creating within these boundaries that Scala sort of talked about. We knew that there weren't cell phones, and we knew that there weren't computers, and there wasn't obviously electronic technology. So as long as I stayed within those,
yeah, exactly.
And then we sort of played off of each other. He made up some fruit that I had no idea about that existed in my land, but said that it gave us energy. And I was like, oh, well, we work a lot over there, so we use it as like an energy drink. So I think back to your point is you need to know the parameters that you set up, and you don't need to know the details of the world as much as you need to know the rules of the world, right? You need to know
exactly
what exists, what doesn't exist, where are the limits. Like you said, the ruling families, the religions, the things that make up a society. I don't know the ins and out of New Jersey. I couldn't tell you every single part of New Jersey, but I do know the general laws of New Jersey and what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, you just taught me about the what was it, the street sign thing or the light poles? How to know what town you're
Oh,
in.
yes. Fun fact, if you want to know what town you're in, I don't know if it's in other states, but there's like initials on street lamps or I guess not street lamps, like electric
Yeah, telephone.
telephone poles, thing. Telephone poles. It tells you what town you're in, see? So you didn't know that. I
No
could have made
idea.
that up.
Yep, and lived in Jersey my whole life. Nope. Yeah, so to me, I think you have to start with a concept, which for us was Game of Thrones. I love the world of Game, and I'm not one of those people who got into Game of Thrones when it first came about. It was more of I watched one episode. I was like, all right, so you introduced me to 30 characters. I'm not going to remember any of them, and I don't care about any of them. And it was just way too.
And everyone dies. Like, why?
Yeah, exactly. It was way too, and I'm not really in. I wasn't really into high fantasy at the time either. I wasn't exposed to that yet, so I got into it relatively late.
Are you into high fantasy yet?
It's the thing with me, it doesn't bother me because well, Allie knows I have a thing with like orcs and stuff like that, where it's just once you cross a certain
too
line,
high fantasy for him.
exactly, it needs to be realistic to me. Like I need to feel like it's something that could happen, not necessarily in the real world. Obviously, like dragons aren't coming around anytime soon, but how would humans react to dragons? That's important, and I want that to be realistic.
Well, there's something that you can relate because you can relate to humans. Even if this weird thing happened, you relate to a human who might see a dragon. It would be like a human seeing a dinosaur.
Exactly.
It'll never happen, but you can imagine what that would
If
be
it
like.
did, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what kind of pulled me into Game of Thrones.
So you got pulled into Game of Thrones. That was years ago. I also got pulled into Game of Thrones when we were working together. I think you peer pressured me, if I'm correct.
Yes, I did. I definitely did.
Yeah. We worked every shift together, and you were like, well, we need to talk about this because I watch it all the time. And I was like, I don't know about that. But we watched it, and it has spiraled out of control from there. We play lots of games because of it. But let's talk about why Game of Thrones inspired you to run Burning Wheel. Or how, I guess, it inspired you to run Burning Wheel.
The main reason is I decided, I have to put my other foot down and kind of DM, because Allie literally DMs everything. Like, she never really gets to play
It's true.
games that I'm involved in, at least in like our friend group.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get into that, but it had to be, to me, it had to be Game of Thrones, because I knew the most about the world, and I like that time period, even like historically speaking, everything like medieval stuff like that interests me. So I looked around at Reddit, everything told me that you can't really do it with things like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like it's just not right.
It's very structured. That's why.
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
Yeah, there's no. Not that there's no room for creativity, because there is.
Yeah, people do it all the time.
It's very structured. It's there's very much classes.
Yeah.
And those classes don't exist in.
Not even close. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, you could have magic, but you're not like a wizard. There's no wizard in.
No, not especially in the traditional.
Unless
sense
everyone's going to be like
yeah.
Melisandre.
Exactly.
And even then she's like sorcerer, cleric, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Depends.
Yeah, that's a hard
I don't know,
one.
cultist,
yeah. Something like that. But yeah, I ended up stumbling across the burning wheel system, and I read through it, and it was so open ended and kind of, one of the most interesting things about it to me was that your age, like what you do, matters because it changes your age, right? Like I didn't see any other system that kind of did that.
Yeah.
Where it's, like, all right, if you're born peasant or you're born noble, it's different. All right, you take this life path, it's going to be 8 years of your life.
It adds 8 years to your life.
Yep. And then, all right, well, I want to be a noble. I was like, all right, well, that's another 10 years. And, I saw when I was creating NPCs, like one of them ended up being like 85 years old.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, he's not going to be around for long. So I probably have to adjust the life paths and stuff like that.
I wanted to add something to Thea. I wanted to like give her like lady in waiting type of thing. It's like 10 years. I was like, well, I don't want her to be like in her 40s. So
exactly. So
yeah.
it's really open ended, but it's also it gives you that structure. It makes it a little more realistic when you have to think about those type of things. And again, even stuff like beliefs, all of that fits in really well with the Game of Thrones, Westeros type world. because if you watch the show or you read the books, you know the characters are constantly changing. There's not really good or bad guys per se, and I feel the same way about our campaign. You know, there's NPCs, there's characters, but you know, there's sometimes I'm just like, oh my god, Thea, what the fuck did you have to do that? Or you know,
Right.
like Norlo
And
does it. But that's the interesting part. It makes it realistic. You know.
so we got our concept from Game of Thrones, right? That's how we found the game.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit how we did some world building, because this was the first time, I think, start to finish, that the four of us collectively, and if you guys don't know, we do have two other people that we work on this with. Check out YouTube so you can meet them.
Yes.
The four of us sat down, and it was truly a collaborative process. So I guess we'll start from the beginning and kind of talk about what we did. That'll help you guys sort of flesh out your world, because I do think that there's no exact answer. We're still working on how to flesh out certain parts of our world that are unexplored yet. And as our characters make choices, we are changing things in the world because it works better. So from the beginning, we knew we wanted a Westeros styled campaign.
Yeah, definitely. You know, intrigue heavy type of stuff.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, we were very much wanted to get away from combat. And not that we wouldn't have combat, but we didn't want it to be like the forefront of what our characters were doing. We wanted to make them socially interesting. You know, we do have a character who is combat heavy.
His character is great, but
great.
It's more about the thing that makes that character great isn't the fact that he has fights. It's kind of his life path and his back. He's got a great backstory. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. So ground up, we had that as a very basic concept, and I think that's a good place to start. I think understanding what type of setting you want is the place to start. You know, do you want something that is, and when we say world building, it's also the type of game you want to run, right? Not just physically what does the world look like. It's what do you want to run? Do you want to run something intrigue heavy? Do you want to run something combat heavy? Because your world building process is much different if you're running a combat heavy game, because your world is in turmoil.
Yeah, that's the best way to do a combat. If you want to combat heavy, you need to have kind of that conflict already in place in the world.
You need a height of conflict, where if you're running an intrigue game, you're either declining from conflict or you're building up to conflict.
Yep.
Which in our game is sort of both, because we decided it would be really cool if we had a big conflict. And that's actually where we started. We said, we want this conflict. Where do we want our characters to start? Before, after the conflict, or during? And we knew we didn't want it during, because we didn't want combat.
Yeah, we didn't want to start off the campaign. I actually forgot that. That's kind of the first thing we talked about was the actual the conflict that was going to kind of happen in it.
I remember joking and saying, well, I want to own a dragon.
And then it happened.
And that's sort of how we started on the dragon thing, though. And it's something as simple as that. Think about the things that you want in your game. And it doesn't have to be these grandiose ideas. It can be something as simple as, like, I wanted a dragon in the game. And I was like, I also want dragons in the game. And then we decided we wanted low magic in the game. We didn't want to be able to just get super overpowered by learning a bunch of spells. So check mark right at the beginning.
Exactly. And one of the Burning Wheel campaigns I kind of watched to get me used to the system. One of the phrases the DM uses a lot is, well, what would that look like? And that really interested me, because the more I thought about it, I was like, that works for us, because, you know, I'm not saying no to anything, right? Like whatever world we're going to build, that's how it's going to be. And I don't want to be, you know, it's more about just saying, all right, how does that fit into our world? And that's, what does that look like? That's what it means to me. And again, we do a lot of things. We build the world in character a lot, which I don't think you should probably do with every group. Allie just has a shitload of experience with this type of stuff. And, you know, Mitch always has interesting character. Like, I always love his character.
Yeah,
Sarah's an actual writer. So
Sarah's a writer. Mitch always has interesting characters, and I think on the fly really fast. So it's a good combination of players that we've kind of settled with.
Yeah, and it kind of, and we would literally build the world during episodes sometimes.
Because sometimes you just don't have the answers, and that's okay. So we started with conflict. We started with dragons. We started with no magic.
Yeah, we said no. Yeah, pretty much no magic. Because and that's the other thing. You don't, like Ali said before, you don't need to have everything set in stone. So, I think Sarah's character had something to do with magic. She had ideas, and I was like, okay, well,
she wanted magic, and so we all agreed that she would have it to a degree. It just wouldn't be like a D&D type of magic where she was slinging spells,
Exactly. And that's, to me, and nothing against obviously D&D or the spells or anything. I feel like I have to keep saying that. It's the same thing with combat. Is it just gives you like almost an answer key of things to do, and we didn't want that. We want we want to be thinking about, all right, what would this character actually do? If I was this character, what's the next step? What do I want to do? Like, what's my ultimate goal? How do I feel about this NPC or this other player? They didn't even start off together, the whole party. They all had their separate kind of scenes.
We didn't meet Sarah until the second episode.
Episode 2, yeah.
But that's hours of gameplay when you think about it, though. I mean, Mitch and I didn't meet until the end of the first game, and then the second one we didn't meet till the end of the second one with Sarah. So we could have gone a whole campaign without even seeing each other if we really if we really wanted to.
Because that's the other thing. It's we do it as almost like you're writing a book or doing like a TV series. Chapters. I think even in the actual
system,
the Burning Wheel system, I think it refers to like scenes as opposed to, or something like that. So they give you the idea of your kind of setting.
Yeah, you're not stuck in this sort of like literal sense of like, oh, and you wake up and you go to bed and you wake up. Like we're not role playing all of that stuff out.
Yeah.
So all right, what was our next point of world building? And I think that a really good point to start with is most societies, fictional and real, are based on religion and politics.
Yes.
So even if you're not super religious or super political, you do know enough to know that that's sort of how the world works. That's how the world goes round.
Exactly. So you need something like that in your game that makes sense to the players and makes sense to if you plan on like streaming or anything, it has to make sense to the audience too. Because you have to remember that it's easy if you're sitting in a room and you're kind of talking about everything and stuff like that. But if it doesn't make sense, it's going to be hard to kind of follow. That's my problem with a lot of campaigns that I tried to watch on like YouTube. Is I didn't understand the world enough to kind of follow the story or end up caring about the characters ultimately.
Yeah. So I think we started more with, we had a general story, and I mean, we're not going to tell you how to write a story and an idea, because it took a lot on our end to go back and forth between what type of story do we want to tell? Where do we want to tell it? What emotions do we want to elicit from our characters? All that type of stuff. But we sort of took a step back and we started with politics, and we decided to link our politics to dragons.
Yeah.
That was how it started. We were like, well, what makes us different than D&D and Game of Thrones? And there is a little bit of linking like politics with dragons in Game of Thrones, a little bit with Daenerys.
Yeah, just not as upfront in your face as we...
Right.
Like, for us, it's pretty much like the building blocks for what society is in our campaign now. Like the people in power are in power because they were chosen by the dragons, and the dragons aren't your typical dragons. They have a place in the world, in the building of the world as well, which is definitely something I didn't think would happen in the beginning, but I'm happy it did, because it adds like a whole nother,
layer of issues. And that was something that we went back and forth a lot about. And world building is not easy, and it's not like a clean process by any means. It is... I don't want to say arguing, but especially if you're doing it with a lot of people, it's a lot of opinions that you have to kind of get through, and you have to reason. And I thought it was really good to have 4 people, because we all have typically Scala and I would side together on a lot of things, and Mitch and Sarah would side together on a lot of it's just because of the way that we think, like we have similar opinions on things like that. But it was really good to see like Sarah's point of view on something when I would bring something up, and the issues that she had with it, and vice versa. I remember going back and forth a lot, you and I, with Mitch and Sarah, about exactly the calamity and the roles that the dragons played in the society, where we wanted them to pick people and really be this like intricate process, where they wanted a more political system, where it was like, no, what about these people and who's related is this blood? And it was a lot of going back and forth.
Yeah, and that's ultimately how we ended up with this system. You know, it was a compromise that
we found a middle ground that worked for all of us. And a big point was, you already kind of touched on it a little bit, we had to make it make sense in a society, right? Now, we know that it's a fictional society, of course, so there's a lot of things that don't make sense. Like, why are these people dumb enough to think there's only 6 dragons in the world? I don't know. Sounds dumb to me, but you know, you can suspend a little bit of belief. But we wanted to make something that if these creatures existed in this world, what would make people believe that this was what it was? Yeah,
what would their reaction ultimately be if dragons did exist, or if it existed for 1,000 years, and you kind of, you know, what would that do to society?
Right. So that's how we started with our political system, and it sort of spiraled from there. You know, we pulled a lot from real politics, not modern politics, of course. No. Much more medieval politics of, I don't even want to give it like a specific type of politics, because we pulled a lot from different things, but we used a lot of reasonable pieces from different parts of history, really.
Yeah, to kind of
we used like a bartering system for a little bit for, you know, we focused a lot on like trade, and not in physical trade, but like trades of people. Like, how can the society give back to one another? How do they use each other?
Yeah, exactly. Even down to the dragons having like specific kind of duties, things they oversee,
responsibilities. But also a little bit of the, you know, royal type of, not inherently a monarchy because we don't have one ruler, but
that was ultimately the conflict.
Yeah, that was the conflict. Was we also had some of that, was that these people were chosen as royalty by dragons, and you know, we played into the, well, why do you just follow people who have dragons, and why aren't they questioning it, and do people really believe that? And that led into the next part, our religion.
Yeah, and just one more thing about that. That's my favorite part about Allie's character, Thea, is she's ultimately playing the audience. Like, she's asking, because she's not from New Sorvia, which is the land the other characters are from. So she's asking the questions that like a regular person would ask. Is like, well, so you guys just believe there's only 6 dragons? Why would you believe that if there's 6 here?
Yeah.
You know, and again, they're definitely with world building, and when you do run a campaign, use that tool. You know, like, let them ask questions in character and have your NPC kind of answer, or, you know, it's fine to step out of it, but I think if you just kind of go with the flow, you could figure it out in character the same way you can outside of character.
And to that's a great tool. Ask a question as if you didn't know the answer. Even if you do know the answer, ask the question as if you didn't, you know, as the quote unquote audience member or the new kid from out of town, is that ask those questions that seem obvious to you because you wrote the world, and you can kind of get lost in what you wrote because it makes sense to you, because, you know, you walked through every single part of that process. So, you know, but, you know, great example, my character Thea, and I did it intentionally because I wanted somebody that the audience could relate to, and it's a great way to learn about the world without having to be like, this is our world, this is what New Sorvia is, please look at this map.
Absolutely. Yeah, we wanted a lot of it to happen in game, as opposed to, you know, us to like, we're going to do things like recaps to make it easier for people who are just coming into the story. But
it's lengthy. It's a lot of information.
Exactly. It's a lot more fun when you're doing it. Like, the characters are learning with you. You know, they're kind of learning about the world with you.
Like, tell me, why do I have a baby dragon and you guys are worshiping them? Does that make me royalty?
And that's the other aspect of it, is it brings so many different conflicts and ideas, and you know, for Allie's character, you know, business opportunities and stuff like that. Yeah, definitely.
Business.
So what was
come buy some apples?
What was our next?
So we talked about we're on religion now. Yes. Religion is much more difficult to write, and I highly recommend, if you are interested in writing religion or you need some ideas, our third episode of The Burning Table, there is a huge segment about our religion. The character Celia goes into a grandiose explanation of how the church works and all of that kind of stuff, and that is a huge credit to Sarah, our player. Pretty much wrote the religion top to bottom. We decided that dragons were the religion. Well, this is what they have. This is what they worship. Why wouldn't, they don't have a deity. There's no monarch that worships, a Christian god, for example. They worship a dragon. So that was kind of what we started with. We said, politics dragons, religion dragons. And Sarah decided to play like an acolyte. And she really ran with it. So advice on religion. Make it make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely fine to pull from
real religion.
You're actual religions.
Yeah,
because
Sarah's
again,
could make a cult, apparently.
Yeah, she technically built two religions. Like, we asked her, it was pretty much kind of just one of those conversations, like, do you want to take the lead on this? Stuff like that.
Yeah, you're going to have to play the religious person, so you do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And she created two fully fleshed out religions, like, in the matter of days. It was insane. And then we just kind of, same thing, we played it out in character where her... Celia explained everything, explained how the religions worked.
Thea glossed over.
Yep. And then that gave me more material that I could use to kind of build conflicts in the world and for their characters and everything.
Right. And she did a great job with it. I certainly, that is probably not a strength of mine, would be that sort of religion. I think another good point is to know where your strengths are and grab from.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I didn't even want to touch it, because I was like, what? I'm going to end up like either offending somebody, or I'm just not going to be able to. And I wouldn't even know where to start with something like that.
Yeah. And I know that by we, I mean her, but the royal we.
Yeah.
So just know I mean Sarah in all of this, not us. We decided that we wanted to do something that would show the values of the people through the religion as well. So I know she did a lot of work with figuring out I can't tell you the exact religion, and I wish I had asked her beforehand. But she did a lot of work looking up sort of religions that were about giving and receiving from the earth and making us whole. I know she took a lot from Latin. I remember that because I remember vacuum, and I was like, that sounds like vacuum. So again, it's super important to pull from real things, because you're not going to create something completely on your own. I think it's important to pull things from things that you enjoy. If you enjoy Norse mythology, you should certainly take from that.
Which is definitely one of my things. So there's a lot of
that's why I said
campaign.
it. Yeah. And it could be something as simple as I briefly touched on this once. Is that I'm super into Disney, which, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I pulled a whole campaign inspired by Disney characters. So I think it's fine to pretty much anything. And there is an RPG for everything in the world. Like,
literally everything.
You think of the movie, the TV show, the anime, the book, it exists to some degree. And if it doesn't, then you might as well go make it and run with it.
Especially with things like Kickstarter that exist now. That didn't exist 10 years ago, let's say. If you look something up, you could find almost a Kickstarter for anything.
So don't think that you can't just pull from things that you enjoy. This Discord that has come up a lot on our channel and probably on this podcast at some point is a play-by-post server that I run called Magic University. It is literally a ripoff of Harry Potter and the Magicians.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not what it is now. That's not what it has
grew,
become.
Yeah, but it was.
But when we started it, the concept was, well, Harry Potter's kind of young. And we kind of want magic to be dangerous. So put the two together, make these kids live at this school, or teenager, or young adults, I should say, because everyone's above 18. 18 plus.
Yeah. We did that.
18 plus. So it's completely fine to pull from things. Some of the best campaigns that I've played in have come from things like Burning Wheel is, and I'm really not saying this because Scott is my DM and could kill me. Burning Wheel, the game we're playing, is one of my favorite games. For all of the reasons that we've already mentioned, but that's a game that got pulled. And granted, it got pulled from a general concept of Game of Thrones. That's not anywhere near what it is now. There is hardly anybody that is like Game of Thrones-esque except for like maybe one character. Arwen is kind of like Tywin.
Exactly.
You know, like
and that was the basis. And he's
except
one of the first
hot.
characters. Yeah, except he's one of the first characters
that
I
you
created.
Wrote. Yeah, and you wrote him kind of with the inspiration of Tywin, if I remember, right?
Yeah, because that's definitely, I wanted a character who was going to be able to drive the intrigue of the story and kind of, you know, and again, even if you watch the story or read the books, I never looked at Tywin as a bad person or a good person. He was just one of those people who, you know, it was family first, which is something, you know, a big thing, you know, and it's the same thing ultimately with Arwen, with a lot of his stuff. And that's the fun part to me, is kind of playing that out throughout the story and then kind of saying, and honestly, I have no idea who Arwen will be 6 months from now or 2 episodes from now. It's all based off of what happens. And, you know,
we certainly don't know that. You know what? Yeah. We'll save that one.
Yeah.
Don't pull a dagger on his wife.
Yes, do not do that. So let's see, we went over a concept.
Yeah. So world building. We went over concept, where to pull from. Mm-hmm. We went over politics and religion, very important. Yes. Collaboration.
Yeah.
In world building. And I guess the next part we can talk about is not necessarily world building. Oh, and we talked about how to world build on the fly.
Oh, yes. Like in session.
Yeah, in session. Again, to finish that off, I do think that, in my opinion, once you have the basis of a world, that's the best place to world build, because it comes naturally to your character to say certain things. And if your character feels right saying it, then it's probably right in the world. If it feels like a truth, you should probably add it into your world.
Yeah, and that's something that I think also gets easier the more comfortable you are with the group and the more
and
you
your
kind
character.
of play. Yeah, because, you know, in the beginning, you know, a big part for me was even something, I think the hardest thing D&D wise for me was like voice acting type stuff, or like putting on a voice and then doing that. It's, you know, it's really
Say
uncomfortable.
Me instead of my character.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's, and I think it's the hardest part for a lot of people.
For everybody.
But once you get comfortable with it and you learn to, you know, just kind of separate the two, it's fun. You know, you're kind of asking these questions in character, you're learning in character, and you're kind of fleshing everything out. And if it's not 100% perfect, or it doesn't, you can always go back and, you know, plug something else in that was like, you know, that could be one of the conflicts, is somebody calls out, it's bullshit, it doesn't make sense, and the world comes apart.
And you can always change things. I think that's super important to remember, is that it is not set in stone. This is not real. I know. It pains me as much to say it as anyone else. These characters and these places are not real, and they're always changing. And if you don't like something, don't be afraid to take it out and rewrite it, as long as you can get all of the players and the DM, depending on sort of the situation you're in. Don't be afraid to change things. And I think that's something that I've learned going through my arc of DMing and playing and DMing and playing and going back and forth, and mostly DMing, is there's things that I've said that after the characters have done something, I'm like, oh man, like it just doesn't work. It just is not part of the story I want to tell. It doesn't work for the people in it. Mm-hmm. I can see there's probably some arguments against that, because some people do like sort of the tension that it could create. But if it makes you uncomfortable as either a player or a DM, I think it's something that does need to at least be discussed and open for change.
Yeah, and it's easy for us with Burning Wheel, because every session is, you know, we have those type of discussions. I don't think it happens as often in things like D&D, but it ultimately should. I think there's definitely DMs out there who do, I don't know what it's necessarily called, but they'll ask questions, like kind of reviews, like, how do you feel about the story so far? Is there anything you want to see?
Just checking in with your players.
Yeah, I think you even did that with Magic. You were like, oh, what are you guys looking for?
Yeah, what are you guys looking for? This is the world. What do you want out of it? What can we change? You know, those types of things.
Exactly. So even if you're not even as a DM, if you're not building the world with the players like we're doing, a good description is extremely important. And I think that's kind of how you know you have your basis in world building, is if you can't describe your world, then it's not finished yet. Like you're not ready to roll anything out.
100%. I think that's great. A great way to kind of wrap up that sort of concept of world building.
Characters.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is kind of like our
Yeah.
next part of world building is character building, right? What type of characters and what type of people exist in your world, per se?
Yep.
And you kind of touched on it briefly. Scala's not super into the super high fantasy stuff. He's not into the orcs and the tieflings and the whatever.
I hate orcs. I fucking hate orcs.
Although you played a cat person. So.
I did. I love cats too, though. So I guess that was my compromise.
Oh yeah. So you played a furry, but whatever.
It's so much worse when you put it like that.
Well, did you have fur?
I did have fur.
Did you have a tail?
Oh my god, what was my character's name? I can't even remember.
Aquarius, Aqua something, or
yeah,
Aqua
it was
Claw.
something like that. Aqua Claw, that's what it was.
It's still on my computer somewhere. I have your sheet.
Of course it is.
I have your sheet. Man, it's gonna kill me that I can't remember. Aquarius something, Aqua Claw. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Characters. So, in world building, we also can talk about character building and what it means to make a good fleshed out character, right? So
Absolutely.
That's kind of how we're going to round out this world building section, is how to make a fleshed out character. So personally, what I do, and we kind of were talking about this off camera before we started, just as
right
we were just
before,
shooting the shit, and we thought it was super interesting, is how do you make a character? Do you do backstory first, or do you choose... Now, in Burning Wheel, it's a little bit different because there's no class per se.
Yeah, your backstory
but
is
in something like D&D or even VTM, where you have to choose a...
Yeah, like a clan.
Do you choose those things first, or do you choose your backstory first? And we actually agreed. Surprisingly, I thought we were going to say different things. But we both agreed that we write backstories before we choose class or clan or whatever that, job type of thing is.
Yeah, especially if you're new to role-playing games, you want to play a character you're comfortable playing.
Right.
Your backstory and your personality is going to matter more than what your class is. That's more your mechanics, And for me, what I've realized is when I do the backstory first, the character kind of builds itself.
I have the same thing. A lot of times people will ask me and you will learn that I play a lot of games.
How many games?
I just joined another game.
Jesus.
And another play-by-post. So I'm trying Curse of Strahd tomorrow, so that'll be fun.
You're close to 20 at this point.
Yeah. I think I counted the other day. I'm in at least 7 or 8 play-by-posts. Something like that.
It's insane.
And I play almost every other day of the week. Sometimes. Anyway, back to the important stuff. You'll learn I play a lot of games. And every time I join a game, the first question someone always asks is, what are you thinking about going? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, there's obviously, and now we'll switch to D&D because, again, there's no classes in Burning Wheel.
Yeah.
There's obviously things I enjoy playing. I like bards. I like anything super charismatic. If you haven't been able to tell, I like to talk.
No.
Me? Me? Talk? I like things like that. I like spellcasters, and I like, rogue-ish type characters, right?
I was going to say, I was waiting for you to mention rogue.
Well, what did I say? My type is roguish charlatan. That is that is the description of the character I like to play. I like to play someone charismatic who also is a little, tricksy,
Mm-hmm.
But I never know going into a game what I want to play unless I have a specific thing for this specific game. I know that I have this great concept for a warlock and that's what I'm going for. I really, like you said, I try to think about the type of person I want to play. I've been playing a lot of overly flirtatious characters, so maybe I want to play somebody who's really reserved and does not like to be around people. That's kind of how I started. I started those basic personality traits, especially in play-by-post games or voice games, but play-by-post games where I have to write a specific way. What do I feel like writing today or for this game?
Yeah, and if you look at the Magic U Discord, you must be 21 to enter, people, because it's that graphic.
No,
sometimes.
It's 18. As long as you're an adult, it's fine. No, yeah.
But yeah, I think it really, like Ali said, it depends on the type of character. We all have kind of defaults that we fall back on, but that doesn't mean you're going to play that character every time.
For sure. And especially when you get, there's a trope that they talk about a lot in like D&D and stuff, that people do that. People will play the same character because that's what you learn to do. You learn to play a rogue, so why wouldn't you play a rogue every single time?
Yeah,
and just alter the personality a little bit, fine tune it. Oh, this didn't work last time. And I admit that is easy. And that is something that I did, and a lot of people do.
Yeah, definitely if you're playing with a new group of people, too, and you're meeting them for the first time, you're going to want to play, because I think the biggest fear in starting a new game is being the weak link, or the new player is kind of having to ask all those questions in sessions, stuff like that. So,
you're the one who learned one move, right?
I learned one move, and that's all I did. That was it. And, it took me a while to realize that, like, all right, well, like, what's holding me back? Like, everybody knows you're a new player if you're a new player, right? Like, they're expecting you to ask questions. And if you don't ask those questions, you're ultimately doing a disservice, because you're going to mess something up and they're going to have to correct you. To
yourself and to the player. And
exactly.
I've been playing these games for, especially D&D. I've been in the same game for 3 years. And last night I was playing, totally messed up. My DM had to correct me like 4 times on something. He was like, "What? You can't do that. Check the radius. You didn't buy that spell. You don't have the money. You don't have the components." So like, it's okay to ask questions. It's not like anyone's gonna get. I mean, if your DM gets mad at you, they're a dick. But whatever.
Yeah, if that happens, find another DM then. Cause
and granted, if it's like the 10th time they've answered the same question, then you're a dick. But
yeah, you have to do your due diligence and kind of like if they tell you, hey, read up on this. And Allie's always been really good about that, kind of like, hey, these are the sections of the book if you have it to kind of look over. And that's kind of the bit. And I think that's another scary part for people is like, so I need to buy this book and read the whole thing.
Yeah. And really there's a lot of resources. I know, and I'm a little extra sometimes, but I know when we started Magic U, I went through the book and I literally clipped pieces of it and put it in the Discord server so everyone could see the parts that I was super serious. Like, you need to know this because I'm not answering the question every single time that you guys have this question. And not that I'm not answering questions, but I'm not, believe it or not, I'm not around 24/7, just like 20/27.
Yeah, exactly.
I need some sleep.
And I think the other good part about that is it kind of, it sees where your player buy-in is and who's going to be your...
for sure.
Yeah, because if they're not even willing to do that, they might not be right for your game. Luckily, I've only DM'd once, and it's with my friends, and I know they're buying because, again, we're creating the world together and everything.
Oh my God, we turned my office into a makeshift studio.
Yep. This goes back to like our first episode when we talked about our addictive personalities.
Oh my God.
Where it's like once we decide we're gonna do something,
it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
All or nothing. That's it. I was actually gonna compliment Scholar for the same thing. Whenever I want to do anything, the second I say it, it's, oh, I watched a video and I did this and I did this research and I bought this book. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I go down the YouTube black hole all the time.
You
where
really
it's like,
do.
Okay, I'll watch this how-to video, and then by the end of the night, I watch like a whole season of a campaign for like it's.
Sometimes it be like that though.
Yeah, and I have to do that because Allie is she picks up things so fast that like by the time I was comfortable as a player in Dungeons and Dragons, she was already like DMing multiple games and stuff like that.
It's not that. It's just that I have an addictive personality and, whatever. You get it. Going back to making characters, all that to say that we start the same way. We start with base characters, characters that you are comfortable with. And as you become more experienced, or even if you just want to challenge yourself, I think it's cool to play characters that you're not comfortable with. And if I'll give an example, if anyone knows me, I am super squeamish, right? Like I don't like blood. Obviously, I'm fine in like D&D and stuff, but like blood is just not my thing. I don't like characters that are like violent for no reason, grotesque behavior for no reason. But I did play a cleric that died who came back as a warlock because I really liked the character. And I had to do some like unseemly things. Like there was one time where I had to rip my own eyeball out. And like that was that was crazy.
Yeah.
But it made me not uncomfortable as a player because I trusted the DM, but it made me uncomfortable and like took me out of my comfort zone to be like, well, I have to make these choices that typically my characters would be like, no, you'll never take me like that, you know? And this character was like, nah, she would rip her own eyeball out to get her power back. So, you know, so I think that that's a, you know, something to work up to. But I don't think there's anything wrong with starting with personalities that you're comfortable with. And then
absolutely. I mean, you're going to be playing that personality, so.
And hopefully for a while, like hopefully your campaign lasts a long time that you're.
Oh, well, yeah, we could do a whole episode on the amount of times campaigns fall apart, and sometimes it's nobody's fault. Sometimes
it's everybody's fault.
Yeah, that's another hard part, and I think that's, you know, why play by post has become so popular. It's a little easier with the schedule and stuff like that.
And it takes people, it puts them in a comfort zone. More people are comfortable writing than they are speaking.
Especially if you're in like a Magic U server where there's sex scenes and there's a lot of flirtation. Like,
yeah, like you can't imagine people actually on voice being like, please touch me there.
Yeah, and it's weird. And if you got like a family, or you know, like you're married, you have like a wife at home, and you're flirting with somebody over a voice chat, you know, you're probably gonna have to explain that before.
Yeah, it's way less weird online. We're not encouraging you to do anything bad, but like whatever.
Yeah.
But like whatever, join Magic U.
Exactly.
You could get that fake girlfriend or boyfriend. Or neither.
It's definitely a lot of fun. Yeah, mine's not even an actual person. It's an NPC.
I made an NPC for his character.
Can't even bag chicks in games. They had to create one for me.
Poor Lonnie. Now we're gonna get you with Misty.
Oh my.
Anyway, I digress. Characters, and then there is people don't like the trope of tragic backstories, but I think it's important that there is some sort of inciting incident because your character is an adventurer, specifically in D&D, right?
Yeah.
In D&D, you are an adventurer. Whether you're beginning or you're level 10, you are on this journey for some reason, right? You're not just like a shoe shiner that is still a shoe shiner.
Yeah, just living life.
You know?
Yeah.
That's more like Burning Wheel. Right? You want to be a shoe shiner in Burning Wheel. You can do that forever.
You could literally do anything.
Literally whatever.
Anything you want in Burning Wheel.
But in something like D&D, it's good to have conflict. And I'm not saying you need the tragic backstory of like, my family was killed and I'm getting revenge. Because, you know, that's a little tropey. I'm for it, but it's a little tropey. But I think that a good conflict is always a place to start with a character. It makes character interesting. Makes people want to be invested in your character, makes you want to be invested in your character.
Exactly.
What's the point of living if you have nothing to live for? And it doesn't always have to be a past thing. It could be a future thing, right? Like, what are you working towards? You want to be a king? You want to be
a goal.
Yeah, you want to own a bar. You want to join a guild, you know, future things. I think that is the second most important. Second step is, what does your character want? Motivations.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of all goes back to Burning Wheel, because all this stuff is in Burning Wheel without you having to actually do it. What are your motivations? What are your beliefs? All that good stuff.
They Burning Wheel really forces you to kind of think about it. And that's why the other thing, they don't call it character creation. They call it character burning, because you're kind of, it's going to constantly change and evolve and stuff like that. And that's the fun part, right? It's kind of, you're living life through this character and kind of experiencing it. And even with Burning Wheel, with like my NPCs, I'm realizing that as I play them and situations happen, or the players get in situations, my NPCs are starting to change. Like their beliefs are starting to change, or they become focused on different things.
Yeah, I made a whole NPC like flirt with me.
Yeah.
And get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost got somebody killed.
And then I think to round it out, that's where you choose your class and your stuff.
Yeah, that's like the final.
You know, whatever fits. Yeah. If you're, you know, you have this certain personality, a lot of times personalities fit with whatever class and whatever race. If you want them to be, you know, combat heavy, you do this. If you want them to be spellcaster heavy, you go that direction.
Yeah, and that's the really good part about D&D, especially for starters, is if it kind of gives you an outline of what you would be able to do for each class and all that stuff.
Yeah, and then race-wise, I think you can choose whether you want it to be part of your backstory or you want it to be mechanic, right? Like, there's a lot of times I choose races because I know it helps me mechanically, because it'll give me like a higher charisma if I want to play a charisma character or whatever. So that to me is how to build a character. Everyone builds them differently. I know a lot of people build them by stats and like min-max stats.
Yeah,
So
I think that's what I did the first time or something
Probably.
like that. Because again, it was just the part that I was worried about the most. Was like I didn't want to slow down
how
the
to
game.
make the sheet, how to
Yeah, and that part's also fun. There's a lot to be said about like a point system. And
cast fireball
yeah, exactly. There's a lot of fun mechanics that kind of come into play with that.
and spells. I love spells. I know our game doesn't have magic, but I like magic in D&D. It's super fun.
I'm just intimidated by it. That's what. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I was too, and then I did, and I was like, I'll never go back. I have, but magic is fun. Magic is good.
Yep. So overall, I think that's kind of the basis
Yeah.
for world creation. Obviously, there's a lot more details that go into it, but those are the overarching things you kind of got to think about, and then everything else kind of falls into place.
Yeah. Think about your story. Think about your people. Think about the world they live in, the politics, the religion, and the type of characters or groups of people that you want living in your world.
Yeah, and if you're not creating the world together, if you're a DM creating a world that you're going to find players to play in, I would say definitely make sure you give a good description of what the world is about so they know what kind of characters to create.
Yeah. Well, speaking of games,
we're going to do our review now.
Yeah.
When do we play? Last week?
Monday?
Monday? Yeah, we
week ago.
reviewed Unmatched game. How did you find this game?
So I was at a game store, and man, I've been seeing this game everywhere. It is like whenever I go into a game store, it's like on that like display shelf as soon as you walk in. And the last time I was at our game shop, when I bought this, the last time I was there, it was on the shelf again, and I was like, man, what the, like, whatever. And like the characters look cool, right? Like Dracula, Jekyll and Hyde. But the way we actually found it is the Bruce Lee one out there.
Yeah.
So my dad is a
here?
huge Bruce Lee fan, and we picked it up because we thought he was looking for some Bruce Lee card game, and then I was like, I think it was James Bond, but whatever. So my dad is super into Bruce Lee, and saw that the guy there at the game store started describing this Unmatched game, and then we were like, screw it, maybe my parents will like it. And then I texted you and was like, hey, have a new game for us to play. So that's how I found it. And also the characters are super cool. This is just one. Oh, I bought a new one. Did I text you that?
I think so.
I think
if
I did.
you didn't text me that, I assumed you would have.
I think I texted you. I went to Barnes & Noble and I bought, there's another one with like some other cool characters.
I was so excited when I found out Bruce Lee was in that, because I'm also a huge fan.
Yeah.
Not just like of the movies, but like his philosophy and everything. So shout out to Papa Cell for also being a fan of Bruce Lee. But it's amazing. One of the interesting things to me is like you're playing like Medusa against Bruce Lee, like people who would never interact. It's not just like fantasy characters. So the fact that they did that just opens up so many expansions. I hope they do.
Yeah. So this one particularly is Dracula, Jekyll and Hyde, The Invisible Man, and Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
And then we also had Bruce Lee. There's also, I know there's a Buffy the Vampire expansion because that's also my mom's favorite. So, you know, what are the odds that happened?
Yeah.
And I don't know off the top of my head the new one that I bought. I could probably pull it up because I'm pretty sure I sent a text to you. So gameplay, what do you think about this game? Let's rate it on our 1 to 10 inches.
1 to 10 inches. All right. So just for gameplay or overall for the game?
Overall, but the other characters are Medusa, King Arthur, Alice, and Sinbad.
Which is amazing.
Oh my god.
It's
I'm
just
so
amazing
hyped.
group. Yeah. So I'd probably overall give this, I'd probably say 8 inches.
8?
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm probably gonna give it 7. And I'll tell you why. I have one qualm, and it's not even a real issue.
Ooh, here we go.
No, it's not an issue. It's actually the people I played with. They're a bunch of bitches, and they kept running away from me, so the game took forever.
She's referring to us.
I am. No, that's the only thing I have to say. I think the artwork is beautiful. I love the gameplay. I think it's super intuitive, super easy to understand, super easy to play. It's a little lengthy. That's the only thing. It's not a game you're going to sit down and like, you know, get a few rounds out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the one thing I will say about that is we didn't end up playing on teams, right?
Okay,
So
that's a good point. That's
that
fair.
might
That
have
is fair.
extended it a little bit, but
You're
I
right.
think even if we did that, we still like even because Bruce Lee's character could literally go anywhere on the board.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't have any like minions or anything like that. It's just Bruce Lee, but he just moves so fast that if I wanted to run from, two players, it probably wouldn't be very difficult to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the gameplay. So you play as a really cool kick-ass person.
Yes.
And you have some sort of helper with you, except for Bruce Lee. He is his own helper. So I played as Dracula and the three sisters. And you have a main hero, and you have whoever your helpers are. Sherlock Holmes has Watson, obviously. Yeah. Jekyll, he's both.
Hyde.
He's Jekyll and Hyde. And you get your own set of cards. And the goal of the game is to fight the other players and kill them. Super simple, right? You have a dial that lets you control your health. You have cards that you can play. And it's just like it's really like any card game. It's
like, and you have your board, and that's the other cool thing with the expansions. They have different
boards, yeah.
It's
and
like
this board
two-sided.
is also two-sided. You can flip it over.
Yeah, so it's like that. I don't know what like that hexagonal
type board.
Yeah, that's how you kind of move around. So, and I'm a big fan of games that kind of have like it's like a combination of a card/board game.
Me
and
too.
Stuff like that.
Huge fan.
It's always interesting to me, and definitely anything with strategy I like.
Yeah, a lot of strategy. It's one of those games that the more you would play a particular character, the better you would get because you would know the cards that you get. So yeah, you have two actions you can take, unless otherwise noted on a card or whatever, and you basically get the options between moving, fighting, playing like an action card type of thing, or drawing a card. So, it's all about economy, how you spend your cards, how you spend your actions. And yeah, we did not play in teams, and that it is designed for teams when you have 4 players.
Yeah, so that probably did slow. I think again, it probably
all right.
It's
Now
a little bit of
7.5.
All right, there we go. You got half an inch. So yeah, I would definitely. And the other thing I like about it is I think they did a really good job of having the cards be be important to the character.
Oh
so,
my god, yes,
like
same.
be like water, and so like it's like a Bruce Lee card, 1 inch punch. Like they did a really good job, and even the mechanics of them, because Bruce Lee, he's extremely fast, and that's kind of his gameplay in the game is you hit somebody and then you could move again. And as annoying as it is for people who were playing with me, I used like every card almost has like add another turn.
That's fine. You got stuck at the end of the game because you went through all your cards.
I did. I didn't think about that mechanic of it.
Yeah.
And I ran out of cards, and ultimately he just kind of killed himself.
Killed yourself.
Yep.
Almost like the real Bruce Lee.
Oh, I have so many conspiracy theories about that, but
something about the sweat glands.
there we go. That's a whole other conversation we had. But yeah, overall, I gave it an 8. Honestly, that could possibly. I just want to see what they do with more expansions if it stays consistent.
Yeah, I agree. The replayability for me is so high. That's super important to me. I think it's hard to find games where like replaying them over and over and over again is like really worth it. And this alone, I mean, take out Bruce Lee, you have 4 options right here of different characters you can play, and they all have a different game play style, right? So Dracula, only because I played that one, was really about like spreading out on the board and figuring out how to like move yourself, because Dracula can fly, so I could mist form and go to like a different side of the board, and if my sisters were anywhere close, I got like all this crazy advantage for attacking people. But it was really hard when you guys weren't near me because I couldn't do anything from afar.
And you went straight into character. just wanted to fucking bite everybody. Stop running from me.
I want to suck your blood.
After every turn.
Yeah.
It's not a game that you need to watch a YouTube video to understand.
I
did anyway, but it's one of those, the instructions are very simple. Even the card you have kind of breaks down the steps for you, which is always great when game systems do that.
Oh my god, yeah, we were talking about how much we love those. We're like, oh, these cards are the best.
Yeah, because it avoids a lot of questions, and it gives you something to kind of look over and get used to the game while somebody else is going.
And why Allie reads all the instructions like I always do.
Exactly. So I think setup for it was
guys,
like,
let's read all this.
We maybe spent like 5 or
We really did
minutes.
not
Yeah.
spend, and that is also important, is when you have to read instructions, especially if you're the person in the group that reads the instructions to people, which I do all the time. I always end up reading the instructions. You watch the YouTube videos, you get the basic idea, and then I read the instructions, and then everyone else kind of just listens.
Yeah, I usually, like, Allie knows the rules. I have weird, like, random information that'll just be like,
I know this random thing.
by the way, yeah,
you can't
exactly.
stack that. Okay.
Most random stuff. Yep.
Whatever. Also, he gets his strategies from YouTube.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. I'm not ashamed. People put it up there for a reason. You
Right.
know? I'm going to take as much as I can from it.
Strategies.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that also comes from it's the addictive personality things. It's not enough just to like buy a game for me. Like I need to know everything about the game.
Right.
I need to be the best at the game, even though with Game of Thrones card game, I never got there and went all the way to New York to get embarrassed.
You're the best.
I'm comfortable. Like I think I'm pretty good now, but then again, I still feel like if I went to, especially we fell behind on expansions and everything. So
I think we told that story in the first episode.
Yeah.
How you got your ass handed to
you.
It
was terrible, and it's terrible because I realized I didn't even mention it in the first episode, but the person I played with after I played the deaf kid was was kind of the head of the YouTube channel I watched, who was like.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so he was there, and that's how I found out about it, and I don't know why I thought it would be. I think a part of it was just kind of like, I watch him all the time, this and that, and but he did not take it easy on me. I probably should have told him I was a new player. But yeah,
that's it. I'm going to a competition.
Oh my god, the dream world! If you could just get paid for that,
right? No one would want to play with me because I get angry.
But yeah, overall, I would definitely recommend picking it up.
100% recommend. Definitely a 10 out of 10 on recommend.
Especially during the Pandy or the Roni, whatever you
want
to call it.
Yeah, 100% replayability, super awesome. Artwork, beautiful. Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
I was like, we were all taking our time like staring at our cards when it wasn't our turns. I'm like, oh my god, this is so pretty. Guys, I just want to play this. I want to show you me sucking blood.
Yeah, and that goes for all, like, we have a very deep appreciation for kind of like illustration and artwork when it comes to these type of things. Not only does it make it easier, I mean, we have our friend
one of
Casey,
our best friends is an actual, like, she works in California and on super big projects like Critical Role. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to get her in trouble or anything, but she's doing a lot right now. So shout out to Casey. We're so
shout
proud
out to Casey. We miss you. We love you.
Definitely. She was a part of our original group.
Yeah. She sleeps a lot. But yes, artwork super important to us, especially because we have someone so deeply rooted in that community. So we have an extra appreciation. I'm not saying I have a great eye for art, but we have an extra appreciation for it.
Yeah, I think we definitely spend a lot of time on just looking at even things with like when I was going through things like the VTM and stuff like that.
Yeah, because we know what goes into it.
Exactly.
Casey
I actually like look at the names of the people who, and that's the other great thing I love about the gaming community is that they actually give people credit for stuff like that, and it's always like the names are always on the illustration.
Well, because it's so important to world building, is being able to visualize it, and if you can't do it yourself, I think I can write really flowery words, but to be able to draw it and put it on paper or screen or what is so different, and it really adds a lot.
It does
to a character, so that is a huge plus for this game. Really, it checks all the boxes. It's easy to understand. Lots of ways to replay it, lots of characters, which is great. I know some people don't like expansions because they don't want to feel like they have to spend money, but you don't even need, there's not like a core set that you even need for this. You need one of these boxes.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't even need I actually don't even know if this is the core set.
Yeah, so maybe that's not even the right word for it, because expansions are ultimately, like you can't play the Game of Thrones card game without like the core.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So this is more of like just different. You have options, different characters.
Yeah,
you can
the little ones like the Bruce Lee. That's I would say it's an add-on more than an expansion. It's just an additional character. But as long as you buy one of these big boxes, then
you're good to go.
You're good to go. You don't need anything else. You don't need any additional resources. I hate games where you have to like take out a pen or a pencil. Like, I mean, I love me some Yahtzee, but trying to find like pens and stuff or Clue, same thing.
Yep. Even when I go for the campaign I run, I don't even have the pen.
No, you don't.
I have to ask Allie all the time. Well, now she just has it ready. She have my own little.
You have a box of pens, highlighters.
Yep.
Yeah, that's like the worst. So I like that there's nothing extra. The box is so pretty. Like the inside, it's super organized.
Yeah,
which was really nice.
You could definitely tell the creators cared about the product.
Yeah,
and
I don't know if this was a Kickstarter, but it feels like a Kickstarter because it's so well put together.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is certainly one of the games I would recommend, and I think we had a great time playing it, and I didn't win, so that's unfortunate.
And that's saying a lot that she still enjoyed it without winning.
Maybe that's why it's only 7.5 now. 10 if I won. 10 out of 10.
All right, we got the truth out of her. That's really what it was.
That's because Mitch sucks and he cheats.
It's not fair. He's not here to defend him. Well, he is here, but hi, Mitch.
He's in the other room. Oh, we didn't invite him. Get out. He's a cheater.
No, it was a lot of fun. Just to go over this, so we're going to be doing this podcast every 2 years. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It will not be another 2 years.
What?
We're going to be doing this weekly. Shout out to Jersey Media for hosting us. And,
Thank you so much. This is helping a lot with my house.
Yes.
I was trying to see if I had a price on this. It's probably somewhere around the $40 range, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's probably, which again, just off of, because what I look for and, how much I'm paying for a game is how much I'm going to play it. And it does have a lot of replay value.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So honestly, it's probably like 30. If I was betting, I'm going to bet 30. 35.
Definitely a reasonable price. So pick it up.
Yeah, it's definitely not super expensive. I know that. I just don't know the exact price off the top of my head, and I will remember that for next time.
As always, support your local gaming communities. Do not
local
pick
businesses.
it up. Nothing against Amazon or Walmart or anything like that, but do not pick it up there if you do have a local game store you can get to, because without them, you don't have a community to play at. Everybody knows that game stores are a big part of the community.
And it's really hard right now during the Roni.
Definitely really hard now during the Roni.
Don't look at me. Did go to Barnes & Noble. Although bookstores are dying too, so support bookstores.
Well, yeah, I put those in the same category. That's a whole nother sad topic.
I try not to buy games at Barnes & Noble. I do buy all my books. I actually go to Barnes & Noble and buy them because
it's also something you should do. I mean, I know it's sad. Like you go in Barnes & Noble now, and it's like there's 15 people on laptops drinking coffee, and there's one person actually reading a book.
Right? Yeah.
It's just why did you even come here, to show people that you have a laptop, or
no? It's to drink the Starbies.
Oh, I guess to drink the Star. Everything's a.
So yes, please support your local game stores. If you are watching this from New Jersey, we visit Time Warp a lot in Cedar Grove.
Yes.
They're great to us. They took us in when we didn't know what we were doing. They're super awesome. Where else? Dragon Horde, you haven't been to yet, but I've been there. That
was the big one, right?
Yeah, it's far from us, but it's super nice. So support your local game stores and your small communities.
Absolutely.
And well, anything else? I
think I'm
ready to go kick your ass in Game of Thrones.
Here we go. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We will see you next week.
Thank you.